Yes, people, what's going on, everyone? It's Mike, it's Wolfie from Forest Fan TV back again. And Wolfie, you glad to be back?
I kind of feel like subliminally you're just bringing me on here just for a little more gloating and happiness. And I'm joking, man. No, it's good to be back. And you know what? Roll that intro.
I actually wasn't going to play it. You just
Roll the
wound.
intro, man. Roll the intro.
You have literally just wound thousands of Evertonians up by saying that. So just to wind them up, I feel like we should. Yeah. I feel well. Let's go. Let's get that intro in. Here we go. Here it is. And you can absolutely blame that one for him. Absolutely.
No. You know what it is, Mike? Right. What they won't admit to in the comments, maybe they will if they're honest, yeah, is they hated it. But now that tune's starting to grow on them because it's growing on me. It's growing on me. And secretly, I know it's growing on them as well.
Yeah, that's it. You let me grow on you, people. You let me grow on you. Wolfie, right, you're here to sort of give me the take on. If you look at Forest and Everton over the last 3 years, you had a manager that just about kept you in the Premier League. I think it's fair to say.
Very fair.
The second season, you weren't so confident of that. So you twisted and you went, right, we're going to get a new manager in. In comes Nuno Espirito Santo. And third season or fourth season, I think it's third season.
Third, yeah.
Yeah, you are now potentially with a lot less stumbling blocks playing Champions League football next season. And the reason for me making this video was looking at that and actually seeing quite a similar story so far with Everton.
Yeah.
And you saw us the weekend, but you've also seen us at home against you, and we were poor at Goodison. We were better, obviously, at your place. What do you think that looks like for Everton's future? You know, new stadium, new owners, new manager. What do you think we can be excited about, or what do you think we need to work on?
Yeah, so we've talked about this quite a bit, haven't we? About the similarities in where our two clubs are, and you could probably say that Forest are probably a year ahead now. Because like where we are compared to where you are, and you're literally going through what we went through last year, minus the PSR, but we shared that together. And I do genuinely believe there's a lot of similarities, and I think the similarities come from the managers. I think their philosophies are the same, their ideologies are somewhat similar, and their their non-negotiables are the same. One of the differences I see between the two managers is when Nuno came in to replace Cooper, he was replacing an iconic manager who had got us up after 23 years. And there was a good sect of the Forest fan base that didn't I wouldn't say it didn't take to him, but was still kind of mourning Cooper, if you like, in terms of that, and didn't see an initial flurry of changes. It wasn't a light switch that got turned on. It was still similar football. I was seeing the changes, and I was, pleased with what I was seeing. But end of the day, it ended up being a survival battle. Okay, it was by 5 or 6 points in the end, somewhat comfortable because Luton are so rubbish. But, that's what we saw. In terms of Moyes, I see a person who's come back. The prodigal son has returned. So he's got that advantage for me already on Nuno. Nuno had to win the Forest fan base over. I think Moyes just coming because he's replaced Dyche and his history. I think he's already got the majority of the Everton fan base on him. So I think from that stance, I would put Moyes ahead of where Nuno started. And I think that's an important starting point, that he will be given the time this season, or the time he's already had, to establish his philosophies, get his changes in, etc. So that's one starting point. The other thing I would say is I've watched pretty much all your games this season because I've been interested to see what happens when Dyche leaves into the progression of Moyes. And I think what he's done has been very subtle, but very effective as well. And the most important thing for you guys, from the experience I've had, is this preseason and transfer window coming up. You've been starved of the players you need, I think. I don't know what your pre-seasons were like under Dyche. I can't confess to have seen any of the games, but I don't assume they were progressive or you were seeing new philosophies, etc., implemented. Nuno, for me, had such a professional pre-season last year where instantly you saw the ideas he wanted, you saw the players he was trying to bed in, the shape of the team and everything else. And I expected, and that's why I predicted Forest 8th at the start of the season, because I expected us to kind of, you know, I didn't expect it to be Champions League, but I thought people talking about relegation have no idea what Nuno's done in that window. And the fundamentals, going back to that, is the defense. What Nuno did, he saw that we were leaking goals at the back. We talked about this last time, dead balls, etc. So I won't go into it too depth. He fixed it by bringing Milenkovic in. I don't actually think your defense is bad at all. In fact, I think it's one of the most solid defenses in the league in terms of what you've already got. I still think I'd like to see O'Brien in the middle. Does that mean switching to a back three or whatever? Because I rate him highly, as we spoke about before we played. But I think that's a good problem that Moyes has. So I would say one of the things you have to do is keep that core, especially that back line. And then to make that next step, if you want to follow in the Forest footsteps, if you like, is you need more pace. I think where you're struggling in your counters is the lack of pace. I know Doucouré scored against us. Pace-wise, he's not blessed. Idrissa Gana Gueye, great player. I mean, he's in his mid-30s, isn't it? Still playing, balling for you guys in midfield. I just look at Jack Harrison. I don't see the pace in him. You know, Dwight McNeil, I think, is a quality player for you guys, but has he got that pace in the kick? And Dyer, you could say, has. And then you've got the profile of the striker who would work in that system in Beto, but I don't quite think he's right there. You know what I'm saying? I still think you need another striker. And that's where I think the transition needs to happen now. So this is going to be your philosophy. You've built the foundation from the back. Job number one, keep your back four and your keeper in line, maybe strengthen, you know, with some backups, strong backups, etc. But then look for pace in those wide areas, because that's what Forest did. Like, I think, although you didn't see it on Saturday because we stunk the house out and you deserved to win, where we've been at our peak is when they've fallen into the Nuno trap, the opposition. Teams come out, leave pockets of space. It leaves Elanga free, Callum Hudson-Odoi free. We can hit them with the pace on the counter attack and then bring the ball into Chris Wood in the middle or whatever it's going to be, and we can score. I think the turnover for Everton in terms of defense into attack, that transition, that's what I would like to see Moyes work on going forward. And for that to work, it needs pacey wingers. They don't necessarily have to be blessed with, you know, ball skills and all that, but if they can get the ball, because you will drive teams into your half, leaving that grass in behind, they can run quick with the ball, you will put fear into the opposition. And what I'll add on top of that is I don't think teams will give you the respect, just like we didn't get the respect for, I'd say, 3/4 of this season, to counteract your philosophy. And what I mean by that is I think teams will still come to Goodison or when you go away, play on that front foot, leave that grass in behind, not drop their line 10 yards or something as an insurance policy, and you will benefit from that. But it has to be, bro, the recruitment in the width has to be the key for me for that next phase. But I think you're ahead of where we were because of the starting blocks that Moyes has come in on, and your defense is already a unit. They know each other. They've played together. You got to sell Ashley Young for me as well, bro. Like, enough's enough with him. But that's the thing. So you could almost hit the ground running quicker than Forest. Because remember, at the start of the season, we drew with Wolves, we drew with Bournemouth, I think, in the first game. Games we should have won where the team wasn't gelled fully on the pitch. So Everton could come off to a quick start. And that would be the opposite of what you guys have been used to under Dyche. Like, he would never win a game in August, if I remember rightly. September, iffy. And then it's by October, it's like, oh, crap, we got to sort ourselves out. So I'd be very, very excited as an Everton fan. What I would say is you have to be ready to accept the philosophy that Moyes is going to bring in.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely spot on with well, pretty much everything you've said, hence why you are where you're sitting right now. The thing that frustrates me almost is what this season potentially could have been if we was in the position to have done it sooner. So, you know, I threw some stats at John earlier, and I mentioned some stats to you earlier, but both Everton and Forest have conceded 38 goals this season. Both, I think, are in the top 4 for clean sheets. Yet Forest have scored 51 goals and Everton have scored 34. If Everton had scored potentially 17 more goals, Everton could be fighting for Europe rather than, we're not obviously fighting relegation now, but obviously mid-table. And we would all of us, to be fair, including me, put a lot of it down to Dyche and a lot of it down to those players. But what those players have actually shown in the last 13 games is that they can score goals and they can attack teams. Don't get me wrong, they don't score absolute bags of goals. But we've been 3-0 up against Spurs before half-time. We've been 2-0 up against other teams before half-time, 2-0 up against Manchester United.
Yeah.
You know, we kept on going and you know, we got a winner against yourselves. We've scored late goals. We scored late goal against Brentford. It's frustrating because when you look at things like that, you actually think Everton actually, even with this group of players, could have been even better. And then take that aside, because obviously, you know, John's got this quote, I don't do ifs, buts and maybes. Fair enough. But
I hear that.
But when you look at where we can go next season with that investment, with a little bit more pace, as you rightly say, because we need pace, it's interesting to see or to experience what's going to happen next season, you know. And people have said to me, Mike, where do you think Everton will finish next season? Like, how confident are you? And I genuinely believe we'll be in the race for Europe. I'm not saying top 4. I'm not saying Europa League. I'm not saying Conference League. I don't know. But I think we're going to be in and around the top 9 teams, just like this season where it's been really tight. The league is won. The relegation spots are done. But that gap between 3rd and 9th, I mean, as you guys know, and you're probably having sleepless nights over it now, to be fair.
Thanks for that. It's on you.
Sorry. It's so tight that anyone could still finish in a Champions League spot, a Europa League spot, a Conference League spot. And I would just like Everton to be in that mix. That's it. That's all I would like. And I know it's a huge jump from where we've been, but I already feel like we've made, and you've just said it, we've already made such a huge jump from Dyche to Moyes anyway. And the whole philosophy has changed. You know, against you guys, what really shocked me was how much we kept the ball on the deck. We were playing the ball on the floor. I was expecting a lot more long balls. We'd sort of had long balls go into our game the last few weeks. And don't get me wrong, we did play some long balls, but there was moments where we tried to play through the channels, play through the width. The goal that we scored is one pass, a mistake, a pass on the floor, and a goal. It's completely different to what we saw under Dyche. And, you know, when I looked at teams like Forest, Bournemouth, Villa, you see how they've progressed really quickly. And I just hope that Everton can do it as well, because it could be exciting for us next season. You know, the whole stadium thing, the whole leaving Goodison this season. It is an exciting time to be a Blue, but it's also difficult because you guys and everyone around you are already a step above Everton in that. So that's where we've got to somehow bridge the gap and get in amongst it. And I think that's the challenge, isn't it? That is the challenge.
I hear that, but I think like we've almost paved the road this season. So you can go from 17th to 3rd, where we currently sit as we're recording this. And I've just flicked through your results, and I don't think, and you'll know better than me, I don't think under Moyes you've won or lost the game. What the hell just happened, mate?
Your camera disappeared. It's gone. He's disappeared.
I'm back. Huh?
He's back.
I don't know what happened, man. It's, someone probably don't like what I'm about to say, right? But no, under Moyes, your results have been obviously a lot of draws. But where you've won and lost, I think outside of, was it Leicester, it's been 1 goal either side.
Yeah.
And I just look at that and I think if you turned next season what you want to see, obviously I know what John's saying, I agree with him, if buts and maybes. But those games where you drew this season, if you could win them 1-0 instead of drawing them 1-0, that turns 1 point into 3 points. I look at the one that hurts me the most as a Man U hater is when you were 2-0 up against Man U. I would have expected, for me, under a Moyes philosophy, you guys to game manage that one out. I know you should have had a penalty. I think it was a penalty. I know he oversold the dive, but I think it was still a penalty. But that was when it was back at 2-2. I fully expected at 2-0, you should have seen that out. Those are the games, if you want to see the improvement next season, where you do go 2-0 up, that you don't blow it. Because what we had a situation for the last year and a half before this season where we were losing a lot of games 3-2, bro. Loads of games 3-2. It was becoming annoying where it was 3-2 and the third goal would usually be a bozo error from one of the players. And those are the ones that we've cut out this season, obviously apart from, well, there's been a few, but the one against you guys at the weekend. And it doesn't take too much to turn the ship around. But what you will get is what we're getting now, is this whole debate, because it's looking hairy now for Champions League with Forest. You've got the part of the fan base that remember where you came from. What did you want at the start of the season? If I offered you this at the start of the season. And then you got the other part of the fan base saying, well, we're here now. Why don't we make the most of it? Let's push on to Champions League. Champions League revenue is going to expedite the growth rate within the club. So you will have these debates. But you know what? I'd rather be having these debates than are we staying up or not going forward. So my main point here is, I know I'm blabbing, is that don't think that the jump from where you are, and you're 13th currently in the table, and I wouldn't be surprised if you pushed up to 10th, maybe 9th. That could be a European spot if certain fixtures and the way it falls happens. But, let's kind of plan for next year from an Everton perspective. You're not starting from 17th, is my point. You'll probably be starting from somewhere between 13th and 10th. Now, to then say a jump up to 8th or 7th, that's not a big reach, Mike. That's not a big reach at all. You're saying jump twice. Now, you can argue, I think the anomalies in this is what happens with Spurs and Manchester United next season, who are below you, who are expected to be up there. Out of all the teams that you're above, if normal order, which I hate, is resumed, you would expect those two teams to be above both me and you.
Yeah.
I think if neither of them, or hopefully neither of them, win the Europa League, they're in trouble, because they don't have European football next season. Who knows what they're going to attract? You hear all rumors about PSR. And you've had your takeover. So I would expect these owners, knowing what you've been through with the previous ownership, to want to be in the Everton fans' good grace and make sure they've invested. But the investment, I don't think, is that big. I think it's investment in a couple of wingers and a striker. The striker, it depends how big you want to go for. Yeah, or do you trust Beto to do the thing? Do you know what I mean? But I'll just say this to you, Mike. I didn't trust Chris Wood. Chris Wood was one of the deadest players under Cooper I've ever seen at Forest. And then suddenly Nuno comes in and finds this life in him because the formation and the tactics suited the style. So maybe there's been signs of Beto this season. You may say it's a purple patch or what have you. I do agree with you. He's probably not quite the one. But what I'm saying is, I would prioritize the wingers over a striker. Get that pace in. And I could see massive changes with a little tweak.
Do you know, it's funny that, because that's actually what John says as well. That's exactly what John says. The other thing I was going to mention is, obviously you saw Brozier start, which it's the first time he started up front this season.
Full moon.
And he did a decent job for 58 minutes. How did you rate him? Because Everton do have a buy option on Brozier.
He's a player I've liked since he was at Southampton, wasn't he, a couple of seasons back? And I thought he had a good season there. And there was talks and links with him and Forest a couple of years back, and I was up for it. My only thing with him is obvious, is the injury record. It's horrific. It's absolutely horrific. And I don't think clubs like Forest and Everton can roll the dice on that, especially where you've got a Calvert-Lewin whose injury record, they must be best mates, in that medical bay, man. They must have plenty of time to discuss things. I think you need just a robust striker. I've seen today you've been linked with, as everyone's being linked with, Delap. Maybe a player like that who's got a season under his belt, who's powerful, pacey, has scored a decent amount of goals for a relegation or potentially relegated team, that could suit you. And that's a 30 million layout, not a big one. But realistically, I've heard loads of clubs are in for him. So how likely that is or not. But someone on that profile, I think what you need is a guy who's been in the Premier League, scored the goals, maybe being overlooked from other clubs. Don't know, I'm trying to think of a name off the top of my head, but do you know what I mean? Someone of that. I like him. I like him a lot, and he's getting a lot of heat, and he's not doing it at West Ham. That I would take him at Forest because I see him as the perfect understudy for Chris Wood. I expect Chris Wood, maybe we can get another 6 months out of him or something, but then you need that profile player who can match what Chris Wood is doing in terms of just fitting in to the strategy, etc. So yeah, I would take him, and Forest fans still coming at me saying why? Because he fits the Moyes system, and he fits a Nuno system. So I agree with you on that, bro.
The thing that I think will be interesting about players like Delap, actually, no, take Delap out of it because I think Delap is guaranteed a move. But players like Ferguson, who hit the ground running, were absolutely fantastic at 17, 18 years old. I've had a couple of injuries, a bit of a bad time, not quite getting where he wants to get to at West Ham. People were talking about £40 million last summer for players like Evan Ferguson. He doesn't cost that this summer. He doesn't cost that. So to gamble on a young English, a young centre forward, Irish, a young centre forward, it's almost a no-brainer. It's almost it doesn't have to completely work. It just has to. You have to get more goals out of him than we get out of the other strikers in our team. For example, if Calvert-Lewin's leaving, which he is, by all accounts, Brozier's going to go because he's only on loan. Chimiti's a young player that Moyes, I'm not convinced that Moyes trusts him. So that only leaves Beto. Beto, look, everyone knows my opinion on Beto. I love his attitude and I love his work rate. But he's not a Premier League footballer as long as I've got a hole in my arse. He's just not. And I do think Everton need it, one, if not two strikers. But you're absolutely bang on. If Everton could just... We lose 12 players this summer. 12, 4 loans and 8 players. Michael Keane, Mason Holgate, Ashley Young, Coleman... Garner's out of contract. Corey obviously did his celebration signing up. He's Calvert-Lewin, and then you've got the loans of Brozier, Harrison, Lindstrom, and Charlie Alcaraz. I suspect we'll sign Alcaraz.
But I think he's all right.
15 million quid he's going to cost. When you look at those things, you can kind of see that Everton. You are right. We probably only need 4 or 5 players. But we need to replace. We need a little bit more depth.
Hang on.
And it'll be interesting to see what he does to fill the depth. It'll be interesting to see what type of signing teammates to just fill the depth. I.e., you're not going to start every game. If the back 4 are fit, they stay in their spots. But the odd game where they don't, it's going to be really interesting to see who we have or who he signs. And then you're right. I think midfield we need a midfielder. James Garner played. It was actually probably one of his better games for Everton.
Obviously,
over the last few months. Garner is brilliant. He'll sign a new deal, but he's going to be 36 by the time his next deal's up. So we need a centre midfielder. We had Mangala, who was fantastic. You guys know all about him.
Brilliant player.
And then you're right, it is the width. But even Ndiaye, for example, I think I would prefer Ndiaye to play in the middle, which then leaves this debate about whether we bother signing Alcaraz, whether you have 2 pacey wingers and go up front. It's such a difficult discussion, but it's a good discussion because it's a discussion we didn't think we needed to have when David Moyes first came in. Because I honestly thought that we were pants. I thought because of what Sean Dyche said, I thought these players, and it wasn't. It was the manager. The manager is so
Fully to blame.
integral.
Yeah,
Yeah,
fully to blame. I think for me, bro, what you need to do is split your transfer window into 2 segments. For me, I think you need 3 starters. Yeah, 2 wingers, potentially a striker, about 3, roughly speaking. And then I think you need 3 to 4 squad players. Now that's a lot in a window, 7 players, but just hear me out. Those squad players.
You are experts in signing lots of players in one window.
I know, like fair. 7 for me is an afternoon's work with my. You know what I mean? So, but like realistically, you'll probably get 5. I think, right? 3 starters and 2 backup players. But if you can do that, I don't think it's that expensive a transfer window. You can pick up good wingers. Like if you look at, you know who I really rate is Sarr at Palace. He would be perfect for you guys. He'd be probably perfect for Forest as well. But that kind of player, do you know what I mean? Who was overlooked by other clubs, found himself a good home at Palace. These kind of deals are around. I mean, we're talking about Yilmaz now at Forest, the Turkish player. You know, he's about 25, 30 mil. But that's like, you know, that's big money for us. So, but we've picked up Alanga for 15 million. We picked up Callum Hudson-Odoi for 3 million. And I think Moyes can wheel and deal. And I think he'll know how to do it. And he'll know what he wants. And it's just a case, will the board support him? And if they do, and they bring him, let's call it 4 or 5 players, 2 or 3 starters, 2 or 3 squad rotation players, I think that's enough, bro. As long, and I'll reiterate, as you hold on to your key players, your Branthwaites, your Jake O'Briens, your Ndiaye, Pickford, as much as he gets on my nerves, I think he's had another good season. But these are key players. If you hold on to those, then this, to me, sends a signal to the fans and to the rest of the league to say, we're keeping our players, we're serious, and we want to progress ourselves back to kind of where we belong, where historically we should be.
Last question from the outside in. So you saw Everton this weekend. Who was the player that impressed you most out of Everton?
Same as before, O'Brien. I really like this player. And the fact that you've added this versatility as a right back is crazy. And this is a player that I'm aware of. We spoke before the game about him. But the boys that I was speaking to on my channel and stuff, they were like, who the hell was that right back monster at Everton? And why the hell were we not in for him? Where did they get him from? I'm like, well, if you watched my videos in the summer, we were linked to him. It's the guys who work with me on the channel. So he really did impress me. And I think, who else impressed me? I thought your 2 centre-backs just, it wasn't so much impressive. I thought they found the game so easy. So easy. Because we played into their hands. And I just thought, in general, your passing is the best I've seen it this season, because we gave you the space to operate in. And suddenly you guys must have been sitting there thinking, there is a passing team here if we need it, if they get the space. And although I didn't think you high pressed us, what I think you did very well was you kind of suffocated us. So if the ball came out to our left-hand side or right-hand side, suddenly there was 2 or 3 blue shirts coming towards, forcing our player to either go back or to punt it long. We couldn't build anything, and that was at our home ground. And let's not undermine what you guys did. We haven't lost there since November. We have only lost to Newcastle and Fulham at home. And Fulham was due to Nuno making a tactical error. We should have probably and could have got at least something out of that. That game for me was the first manager who's come to the City ground and said, right, this is Forest's strength if they give us the ball. But let's see what happens when we don't operate a high line on the halfway line. Don't allow Elanga the space and freedom to run, especially like in the second half when he came on. And I just think tactically, the thing that impressed me the most was Moyes. And I've not always been his biggest fan. I haven't. You know, I do think some of his football philosophies are getting a bit outdated. But you know what? I've had to sit there and think, look at where West Ham are now without him. Look what he did to West Ham. Look where he took you in his first phase. And look at the changes already made in him. So the person that impressed me the most was Moyes on Saturday.
I love that. I love that. That's such a good answer, that is. That is such a good answer.
You're lucky I don't mind your club, bro. Otherwise, I would have said no one.
Yeah, no, okay. No, hey, listen, look, you know, you already know that it's nice when teams outside the so-called top six are causing problems. So, you know, I want Forest to go on and get Champions League football. I think it would be really nice for Forest to get Champions League football as well. And, you know, away from, you know, I've got to mention it because it's the channel, but, you know, away from the whole horrible song that gets sung every time we go, the facts are every single Forest fan that interacted with me over the weekend, every single Forest fan that bumped into me in and around the ground at the, you know, turnstiles and whatever, everyone was fantastic. And I just, for me, I'll always have a bit of a soft spot for Forest because of the way that I have been treated by that club since you've been in the Premier League, and even past things in my family that have happened, etc. So I'll always have time for Forest, and I do hope that Forest get Champions League football. And if I'm being honest, and I'll be straight with you, I think Everton take something off Man City as well this weekend. I really do. At Goodison, you know, I know Man City have you know, got 5-2 against Palace, etc. With 2-0
Bro,
down.
you are perfect to play against Man City. Now, remember, we just beat them at the City ground 1-0 because they fell into the traps, which Moyes will lay out. Moyes would have watched the Forest Man City game inside out. He'll know how to lay the traps out to get them. And they weren't even up for it. So I think I hope you do them. But yeah, just on the chance and stuff. Look, my stance on it is simple, man. If it's offending people, it shouldn't happen. But for me, there's this bubble, isn't there? The tribalism that happens in the stadium, and things are said from both fan bases and what have you. I never get offended by anything, you know, personally. I get that Everton fans will get offended by it, so I don't like it for that reason. But you know, I'm a Forest fan. You're an Everton fan. Me and you chat so much, and we get on so well. Not everything is about what happens in that stadium. There's persons and people behind the club, behind the thing, and we're all humans and stuff. You know what I mean? So it's like, I don't want everything tarnished because of someone's upset with something or someone's called us a scab or whatever. You know, it is what it is. I like to build relationships on the people I meet and everything. And yeah, you're all right, I guess, Mike.
No, I think you're spot on. I think if you take yourself out of that bubble, we're all just people, and that's what you know. It is what it is. So, guys, right. Wolfie, as always, has been fantastic. You would have You would have seen from the start that Wolfie's channel is in the description. It's on the title. We'll get a nice picture of him that's not telling us to shush. We'll get a nice picture of him, and we'll get him on the.
Where did you get that from? I didn't even send you that one, have I?
I googled it, man. I just googled it.
Came up with, I'm on Google these days. Wow.
Oh mate, yeah. Honestly, you're famous. So yeah, so I'll make sure I get a nice picture of him. But guys, look,
sorry, mate. I just want to think there was loads of your guys that were commenting on our videos over the weekend. Big up to them. Really nice comments, wishing us the best of luck and everything. And you know, we read all those comments and thank you guys so much. And make sure you're liking and subscribing to these two boys because they're just the fans that you can get on with. Real freaking fans who just enjoy football for what it is. And I love these guys. Shout out to Mike and John.
Yeah, appreciate it. And the same obviously for Wolfie, Ease, Ant, Rob, Crypto.
Yeah, they're twats, man.
I don't think I've missed anyone else, have I? But yeah, just go over and give them a subscribe and a like, guys. They are brilliant people. Make sure you watch the shows. Me and Wolfie will be doing some content. We've got to work out how and what we're going to be doing, but we will be doing some content together in the summer, in various bits and bobs as well towards the end of the season. So make sure you
pair of shorts.
Oh yeah,
topless.
No boxers on. It just dangles there.
Speedos. Oh god,
jousting for league position.
It had to go south at some point.
They call Wolfie the swordfish because he's always pointing out. Oh God! Right, guys, look, I'm leaving it there. That's the end. I've done all that. Peace to our guys.